Greetings! So I'm back with another little recap video of sorts where I take a closer look at one of the things you saw me talk about in a previous video. In this one, I'm gonna talk about this palette. So I painted something with it and I have thoughts and impressions. Now, you saw me struggle to open this palette. It's mostly because my fingers are really like damaged from water and cold, and they're really sensitive. It's a bit difficult to open, but I think most of my issues come from my fingers hurting, not the palette itself. If you remember, it opens up with this mixing area, and then you have this bottom tray where you have sort of a flap protecting the paint wells. The paint wells are nice and big. They are slanted on one side, like here and here, and this side is more like flat, but it's a bit rounded at the bottom too. So I think this is a fairly good shape for a paint well. It holds 24 colors, which is nice. So you can flip this back and close it up. You could also paint with this. I think it's intended more to be used perhaps this way, like with your thumb on this. And I think that, that seems to work out fine. It's resting on your arm, so you can kind of paint with it. What I put in there is two sets of Holbein colors that I had. They are older sets that were put together by artist Yuko Iguchi, and I really like these colors. I think they're great. I didn't put a lot of them in this palette because I did not know if I was gonna love the palette or not, and you don't want to put a lot of paint in a palette that you're not sure you're gonna use for long. But I thought this palette was quite nice. I think if you fill up the wells more, it's probably more fun to use. For me, I had to kind of swivel my brush on the paint because they're quite deep, but I don't think that's a flaw. I think that's just a matter of adjusting the amount of paint you put in them. The mixing area was, decent enough. It's not exactly like mixing on ceramic, where nothing beads, ever. Some of the colors you can see they beaded up a bit, but for me, as long as I can look at some of the paint and kind of figure out what color it is dry on my palette, and if I can use this to paint what I need to paint, I'm good. So this worked out fine. The paint has not been on this palette for very long, but I wonder if I left this dried up paint on the lid, if it would flake off eventually. I painted a quick thing with the palette just to give it a spin. It's a spread, it's 2 pages, but on one side I put the colors from one of the sets, on the other side I put the colors from the other set. My illustrations are inspired by an anime we're watching at the moment called Dan Da Dan, and it's a bit wild, but it's a lot of fun, and it has a cat character in it, so just saying. But yeah, I thought I would try to use like mostly these colors on this side and then these colors on this side and try to connect everything together. I think it worked out fine. I mean, I don't have any issues with the Holbein paints. Holbein paints are some of my favorite paints. That was fine. In terms of using the palette to paint this, it went really well. I really didn't have any issue. I think this is a very serviceable palette that is also quite affordable. And if you're looking for something that you can carry around and not worry about losing it or breaking it, I think this is a good one. I quite like that the wells have this lid. I think that's a really nice idea, and I think more palettes should try to implement something like that. Of course, you could mix in here, but I didn't feel a need to, and then I can just properly put that back. It's an excellent way to protect your paints from dust and cat hairs and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think this is a really nice palette. It's not amazing, it's not mind-blowing, it's not a fancy palette at all, but it definitely works out fine. It protects the paint, doesn't take too much space once folded up. And I think that for a few dollars, that's a nice find. So again, let me know what you think of this palette in the comments. What do you make of this idea of having a flap to protect the wells, and the wells being like deeper and bigger and kind of well made, to be honest. I quite like these. So yeah, let me know. I would love to read your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And we will see each other in the next one. In the meantime, take care and bye-bye.